She told me, "It's complicated," and I didn't believe her. It was late on a Wednesday night, and we were sitting on the couch, the muted glow of the TV casting a faint light on the room. The air between us had been heavy for days, and I could feel something was off. I had asked her about it, hoping she'd open up, hoping we could finally talk about whatever was pulling us apart. But when she said, "It's complicated," I knew immediately that it wasn't going to be the simple, heartfelt conversation I was hoping for. Ich glänzte over. Her phone was in her hand, her thumb scrolling absent-mindedly, and her eyes were fixed on the screen like it was the most interesting thing in the world. I could tell she was avoiding my gaze. I'd seen this before. She'd always been the type to close herself off when something was wrong, but this time, the distance between us felt different. It was like I was sitting next to a stranger. "Complicated?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's so complicated? Are we not okay anymore, or what?" She looked up at me then, but there was no spark in her eyes, just a sort of resignation that made my stomach churn. "I don't know how to explain it," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just don't want to hurt you, but I think I've been holding on to something that I shouldn't be." She paused, biting her lip like she was unsure how to continue. "I think I need space. I don't know what I want, but I feel like I need to figure that out before we can move forward." My heart sank. Space. I wasn't sure I even knew what that meant anymore. Was she saying she needed a break? Was she saying she needed a break from me? The words felt like they came from nowhere. Just a few days ago, everything felt fine. We'd laughed about silly things, made plans for a trip we'd been dreaming of for months, and I had no idea that she was struggling with whatever this was. I leaned back on the couch, tried to process what she'd just said, but the more I thought about it, the more confused I became. "Okay, so what does that mean? You need space, but what does that look like? Are we still together, or—" Before I could finish, her phone buzzed loudly, interrupting the tension-filled silence between us. She glanced down at it, her fingers twitching slightly as she picked it up. I could see her trying to act casual about it, but the tension in her shoulders betrayed her. I tried not to look, but curiosity gnawed at me. I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't help myself. I glanced over just for a second. She didn't seem to notice, her focus still on the screen. Then I saw it. The text message preview popped up. "I love you more." My pulse raced. I recognized the name attached to the message immediately. It was his name, Daniel. He'd been her friend for as long as I'd known her, but lately I'd noticed the way she talked about him. Offhand comments, messages exchanged in the middle of the night, the way she'd get quiet when I asked about him. It wasn't just friendly anymore. It had never been. I froze, the air in the room suddenly thick, suffocating. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I should even say anything. But the words burned into my brain, the three simple words that shattered everything I thought I knew about our relationship. "I love you more." We'd been together for 3 years. 3 years of late-night talks, vacations, meeting each other's families, building a life together. The last few months, though, had felt different. She'd been distant, distracted, even when we were together. I tried to tell myself it was work stress, or maybe she was just in a funk. But now, I couldn't ignore it anymore. She wasn't confused. She wasn't just taking space. She was emotionally involved with someone else. I didn't know how long it had been happening, or if it had started before or after the last fight we had, but the truth was undeniable. I looked at her again. She was still staring at her phone, her fingers still tapping away at the screen, trying to act like nothing was wrong. She was either incredibly good at pretending, or she had no idea how obvious it was. Either way, I couldn't let this go any longer. "Is that from him?" I asked, my voice more calm than I felt. She looked up at me, her face pale. "Chris, please," she started, but I cut her off before she could say anything else. "Is it from him?" I repeated, my voice sharper now. I couldn't stop the rush of anger that bubbled up inside me. I needed her to tell me the truth, and I needed her to say it now. Her lips trembled, and she put the phone face down on the couch between us. "Yes," she said quietly, her eyes never meeting mine. "It's from Daniel." She paused, like she was searching for the right words. I don't know what to say, Chris. I'm sorry. I felt my blood run cold. Sorry? Sorry for what? For leading me on? For making me think everything was fine when it wasn't? For letting me believe that I was the only one who mattered? The only one she loved? You're in love with him, aren't you? I whispered, my voice trembling despite myself. It wasn't a question, it was a statement, and she didn't even try to deny it. She squeezed her eyes shut and nodded, a single tear escaping down her cheek. I didn't mean for it to happen. I swear, I didn't plan for this. But I've been talking to him for months, and I thought it was just a friendship, but it turned into something else. I didn't know how to stop it. I never wanted to hurt you, Chris. I never wanted to hurt you. But she had. She had hurt me in ways I couldn't even begin to describe. I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Betrayal? Heartbreak? It was all mixed together, crashing over me like a tidal wave. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had trusted with everything, was gone. And in her place was someone who was lying to me, someone who had been giving their heart to someone else while I was left in the dark. I stood up abruptly, pacing the small living room, trying to breathe through the suffocating weight of it all. You're in love with him, I repeated, more to myself than to her. I couldn't stop the words from coming out. And you were lying to me the whole time, telling me everything was fine while you were telling him you loved him more. Kara stayed silent, her hands trembling in her lap, the guilt written all over her face. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to demand an answer. But I couldn't. I just couldn't. It felt like my chest was collapsing in on itself, and no matter how many breaths I took, I couldn't fill my lungs. You're leaving me for him, aren't you? I finally asked, the words bitter in my mouth. Her face crumpled. Chris, please. I never wanted this. I swear I didn't want to hurt you. But I couldn't hear it anymore. I didn't want to hear her excuses or her apologies. What was the point? The trust was gone. The love was gone. The person I had thought was my partner, the person I'd shared my life with, was no longer the person standing in front of me. I need you to leave, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I need you to go. Please. She hesitated for a moment, like she was trying to find the words to fix everything, but she couldn't. She couldn't fix what was already broken. Without another word, she stood up and grabbed her coat, walking out the door without looking back. I stood there for a long time, the silence between us thick and suffocating. And for the first time in 3 years, I didn't know who she was anymore. The next few days were a blur. I spent most of them pacing, barely able to eat or sleep. And when I did sleep, I couldn't escape the image of her with him. I couldn't stop imagining them together, sharing moments I thought would be mine. But I knew, deep down, that it was over. The love I had for her was gone, shattered by lies, by betrayal. I didn't know if I could ever trust again, not after this. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to keep waiting for someone who had already left me behind. Part 2. The silence after Kara left was deafening. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the door she had just walked out of, trying to wrap my mind around everything that had just happened. I had so many questions, but no answers. I wanted to call her back, to scream at her, to make her understand how much she'd hurt me. But I didn't. I couldn't. I just sat there in the quiet, letting the weight of it all settle in. The next day, I barely managed to get out of bed. I didn't want to talk to anyone, didn't want to leave the apartment. Every inch of my space felt tainted by her absence, by the lies. I kept thinking back to the times we had together, the late-night walks, the lazy weekends, the plans for the future. And now it all felt so hollow. How could everything be so real and full just a few days ago, and now feel like it never even mattered? I spent the whole day thinking about the text. I love you more. What did that even mean? How long had she been saying that to him? Had she been lying to me for months? Or was this something that had just happened? I thought I knew her, thought I understood her, but now I felt like I didn't know who she was at all. That evening, I picked up my phone. I wanted to delete her contact, block her number, just to stop the temptation to reach out. But I couldn't. The urge to understand, to ask her questions, was overwhelming. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face her again, but I needed some closure. I needed to know why. I ended up typing out a message. Kara, I can't stop thinking about what happened last night. I need to know what's going on. How long has this been going on with him? I stared at the message for a long time before hitting send. The seconds felt like hours, but there was no reply. Nothing. I refreshed the screen obsessively, waiting, but she didn't respond. The next morning, I went to work, if you could even call it that. I sat at my desk, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept drifting back to her, to him, to the love she had for someone else. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces together. I saw them laughing, holding hands, sharing private moments. My stomach twisted, but I couldn't escape it. At lunch, I found myself at a cafe, staring at my phone again. It was stupid, I knew it, but I was waiting for her to message me, to explain everything, to tell me that she was sorry and that it hadn't meant anything. But I knew better than to expect that. She'd already made her choice. The text from him, those 3 words, told me everything I needed to know. She was in love with him, and no matter how much I wished otherwise, that love was real. I spent the rest of the day like that, distracted, numb, angry at myself for even hoping she'd change her mind. I tried calling my brother, tried getting him to take my mind off things, but the conversation kept drifting back to Kara. I couldn't help it. That night, I was sitting on the couch, staring at my phone again, when it finally buzzed. It was a message from Kara. "I'm sorry, Chris. I never meant for it to go this far, but I can't keep lying to you. I've been in love with him for a while now, and I don't want to hurt you anymore. I think we both know it's over. I'll be out of the apartment this weekend. I'll give you space. I hope you find happiness." I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. The finality of it hit me like a freight train. She was done. There was no we anymore. There was no us. It was over. The words stung, but they were also a relief. At least now I knew. At least now I had the closure I didn't even know I needed. I didn't know how to respond, or if I even should. Part of me wanted to tell her off, to rip into her for everything she had done. But another part of me just wanted to be done. I didn't want to drag this out. I didn't want to keep reopening wounds that she had already cauterized with her betrayal. I decided not to reply. I just put the phone down, sat back on the couch, and stared at the blank TV screen. It felt like I was suffocating, but at least I wasn't still holding on to false hope. At least now I knew what I had to do to move on. The weekend came, and she did what she said she would. She packed up her things and left the apartment. I stayed in the living room, watching as she took the last of her bags and walked out the door. There was no dramatic goodbye, no tearful confession of regret, just the sound of the door clicking shut behind her. And in that moment, I felt both empty and strangely liberated. The apartment felt different now. It was quieter, but not in the way I expected. It wasn't oppressive anymore. There was no more tension hanging in the air, no more wondering where she was or who she was texting. There was just space. Space that I desperately needed to fill with something else. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and stared at the letter she had left on the counter. She'd written it for me before she left, apologizing for everything, explaining that she didn't want to hurt me. She wrote about how she had never meant for it to go this far with Daniel, but she couldn't keep pretending anymore. I read it once, twice, 3 times, but it didn't make a difference. The words were nice, but they were hollow. I didn't need apologies. I didn't need explanations. I needed her to be the person I thought she was, and that person was gone. It took me a while to fall asleep that night, and when I did, the dreams were filled with her. But they weren't the dreams I used to have. They weren't the kind where we'd be laughing together or making plans for the future. They were filled with betrayal, with me chasing after her, trying to fix something that was already broken beyond repair. The next morning, I woke up with a sinking feeling in my stomach, but it was different now. I was sad, of course, heartbroken, but I was also determined. I wasn't going to beg her to come back. I wasn't going to chase after someone who didn't want me. I wasn't going to keep fighting for something that was already gone. It was time to let go. It was time to move on. I spent the next few weeks doing exactly that. I deleted all of her photos from my phone, threw away the little trinkets she'd given me over the years. I deleted her contact information from my phone, erased the messages we'd exchanged. I went to therapy. I worked out more, started cooking meals again, things I hadn't done for a long time. I reconnected with friends I had neglected while I was wrapped up in our relationship. And slowly, the pain started to fade. The hole in my chest, that feeling of betrayal and loss, became smaller. I started to find pieces of myself again, the parts of me that had been overshadowed by her. It wasn't easy. It wasn't quick, but it was happening. As for Kara, I don't know where she is now. I don't know if she's with Daniel or if she's still figuring things out. I don't care anymore. All I care about is me, and I'm learning to be okay with that.